My name is Stephanie Atias. I lead brand marketing here at Placer.ai. I am so excited for this particular session with Will Phillips, not just because he leads our customer success team, but also because he is a retail expert and has worked with some of the best brands in the US. So with that, Will Phillips.
Wow, thank you. And it's like later sessions in the day, right? So so far, super successful. Hi, great to meet you guys. So the high level topic for this session is site selection. I think you probably get that from the title. However, my hope really here is to bring you up to speed on the ever-changing world of real estate strategy and how it's become simpler, yet so much more complex over the years. I've been in this space for quite some time, so I've seen evolutions along the way. So let me figure out this remote. Okay, so everything starts with the customer. I want to step away from retail strategy for a minute and really talk about how customer behavior has changed across the board, largely due to like a dramatic increase in options in different modes of consumption. So I wanted to use television as my muse, right? So we all know how television has changed over the past few decades, from network TV to cable and dish to streaming. There's so many options and so many ways that we can consume those options. To me, it's amazing how fast streaming has continued to evolve. So look at cable. Cable has fallen just in the past 2 years from Nielsen by over 5%. And there's so many more like streaming services that are gaining at least a percentage point of market share. And they keep adding to it, and it keeps evolving at a rapid clip. So the reason why I bring this up is I think retail customers have the same complexity. You guys heard from Alicia this morning from Meta, like all the different ways people consume content, and better yet, like what drives their motivation to go actually take that on, right? So we have the same challenge here, both with the number of options and the paths to purchase. So this is also compounded with brand loyalties, preferences driven by social media, this idea of creating your own, lifestyle brand for your own personal household. Yet, we talk to so many different customers, and whether they come to Placer or they come to other people, they've been using methods and data sets that are 15 years old. So how could you ever think about the future of the customer and how you should service them if you're using these dated methods? All right. So let's hop in. I guess it's time to introduce me. So thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate the intro. So I'm Will Phillips. I lead customer success for all of our consumer-oriented verticals. So retail, restaurant, CPG, entertainment and leisure, like casinos or theme parks, and then also our big finance clients, right? So think hedge funds that trade on our data, but then also the PE firms that invest in a lot of the companies that you guys run. So I've been here a little over 2 years now, but I come from your side of the table, the client side. So I've spent the last 20 years in location strategy and customer behavior analytics across multiple big brands, as you can see here. I've seen them during times of transformation and growth. And it's I worked at JCPenney, so I've seen times of optimization too. The good thing is a group like you guys working to better your location strategy, honestly, it's an evergreen kind of play. You can use it in growth mode. You can use it in consolidation mode. You can use it in deepening your engagement with customer mode. There's so many paths that each one of you guys can really hop into. So I'll give you a quick rundown of just some of the ideas or concepts that I've run through with some of these companies, because I think that'll feed into what we talk about conceptually around site selection, customer behavior, and all those things. So my time at Target, I have a couple Target colleagues here. Hi, David. My time at Target was really spent developing their small format concept. So when I joined, we really needed to seek out additional market share. We had hit suburban saturation. What kinds of concepts and what kinds of methods could we actually go reach those customers? So we were really focused in on developing that concept, and we'll talk about that in a little while too. We also managed the $6 billion remodel program that took the behavioral elements of every one of our stores and created remodels structurally around each one of those behaviors. So we'll get into that a little bit too. At US Bank, so US Bank, fifth largest bank in the US. When I came on, we had 3,000 branches. We closed 30% of the branches, and we only lost 2% of customers. So to be honest, this was a 100-year-old plus company that never had a strategy team in place, and they grew through acquisition without parsing off the duplicates. It wasn't that hard of a job, but it's still super successful. And we took all of that money that we saved from labor costs, real estate costs, all those things, and reinvested that back into the system. right? So we had a targeted remodel program that really leaned into how each one of those branches were really utilized. This is going to be a theme, guys. Sorry, but we're going to talk about store clusters, trip types, like how we should be thinking about customers using each one of our stores, even though like we may have one uniform brand, like each one actually acts as little separate brands. And then the last one I'll call out here is, although Target gave me so much insight into like store-oriented sales and then the step into of BOPIS and all those things, my time at GoPuff, which owned Bevmo, the big liquor store chain on the West Coast, like it really doubled down on that. So I ran strategy across the US and the UK, and we built out a micro-fulfillment infrastructure plan to really deliver convenience and grocery items to people like within 5 or 10 minutes, right? So we really had to understand who our customer was and how to get to them and place our fulfillment centers appropriately. I'm going to pause here for a second. I don't want to talk at you guys the whole time, so I'm going to have little pauses along the way. I think I have some people on my team that probably have some customer stories, but if you guys have anything to share or any questions along the way, let me know. I'm here for it. We're in the afternoon session, right? Okay. So what is site selection? This is odd, right? But one of the first things that we're asked by all of our new clients is, can you help us with site selection? Our teams have had this conversation hundreds of times. And I think it's really important to really define what site selection is, because I think coming into it, we all think it's easy, right? Like, hey, tell me where to open up the next store. But let's also make sure that it's profitable, and let's also make sure that we're maximizing coverage. And like, why shouldn't we be at North Park Mall? Because the broker says I should, right? It's like, how do we actually define what this is? So this slide's going to get lengthy. So for most, they want to start at the end, right? They see site selection highlighted down there in white. They're like, let's go straight to it. But in my time, I really define site selection as this larger journey or this process in a roadmap to get through it. That way you're really efficient with your deal maker time and all those things. So for me, the journey really starts with understanding the goal, right? Is this a new market entry where you're testing a new concept? Are your leaders seeking full market saturation to dominate the competition? Like, are you looking at store level profitability, or is it market based? I've seen both. And is finding the highest revenue opportunity the highest priority, or is profitability the play? Right? So I ask these because I think so many people jump to the very bottom of this. And I really think you have to know what your executive leadership is really trying to solve for. That way you're most efficient in your journey. So I'll give you a high-level view of this proposed process. We're not going to go deep on every single one, given the time. However, my team and I are always willing to come to you, meet with you, whatever it is, to kind of walk you through this journey. Or like, we work with retailers and restaurants in so many different ways across marketing, merchandising, operations. Like, we're here for it. So bring us in. We'll help. So after aligning with that overall goal, right, we really need to dig into how customers engage with your brand or don't. This is one of the topics that we'll get into in a little later step. We also need to think about the customer behavior and how they engage, because only then can we really start to identify the submarkets, the areas of markets that we really want to go into. I call them areas of interest. Some people call them seed points. I'm indifferent to the terminology, but you really want to understand not defined shopping centers of where you're going for, but areas in the market that you want to grow and the reasons why. And only after that can we really start to quantify white space. I know a lot of other companies that I've worked with in the past have essentially said, the Chicago market is 8 million people. I need 200,000 people to serve these markets, and it's easy division. That's how many stores I can do. We all know that's not true, right? Densities exist in cities and then lighten up in the suburbs. So we really need to do this area of interest study before we can really get into that white space definition or the quantification of how many stores you can do. So once we begin to quantify that by geography and our goals, then we could start to decide the trade-offs along the way, right? This is market planning. This is the puzzle. You're going to have different concepts that you're trying to grow, and they're going to have overlapping trade areas or overlapping customers. This is the puzzle, right? This is where it gets fun, because you have conflicting types of motivations moving forward. So how do you better define with your leadership teams, like which one is more important to you, so that you can define those things? And then after we have all of those things done, that's when we could start to define which shopping centers we should go in, right? We're looking at these local options. We're weighing both the traffic in these shopping centers versus the rents that are being asked, all of those things. But at a high level, like this is what the process that I've used at multiple companies, and it's really driven a ton of efficiency along the way. So today, I really want to hone in on these two topics: customer analytics, because I think it is foundational and core, and then also the market planning and site selection piece of it later on. So remember that chat earlier about the evolving customer? Most companies don't spend a ton of time like defining who that is and the varieties of how they engage in the marketplace, both with your brands and with others. So one of the great things about Placer, and like honestly, it was one of the big reasons why I was a client twice, was that we provide a fast and efficient path to really understanding how different customers engage with your stores and your competitors. So once we get through a few slides on customer analytics, I would love to show you, and I'll bring Tyler Nelson up, my colleague here, to talk about the current tool set that we have to help with market planning and site selection. Then we'll also sprinkle a few notes on what product is working on to make all this even better than we have today. All right, let's hop to it. Okay, so I'm going to start with the true challenge that I think most of us have. I think it's been a theme throughout the entire day today. It is the customer. How do we do myth busting, right? So many companies believe deep in their bones that they know exactly who their customer is and how they behave in the marketplace. However, at every single company that I've been, that profile has been dated. It's not really relevant, right? So you can't assume the profile that you had of 5 years ago is the future state of your brand. So just a few examples. I've been through this a few times, but I'll give you a couple stories. One, let's talk about the integration of Sephora into JCPenney. I know they're with Kohl's now. It's a different story. I'm old and I was with JCPenney. But at the time, many of the leadership team thought adding Sephora would drive an entirely new customer. And they really thought that the existing JCPenney customer was too discount oriented, too like budget oriented to even dive into the Sephora world. So the intent was really to bring in a new customer base to revive the brand and move it forward. It's not what we found at all. What we actually found was the customer profile remained about the same. But what we really found out was the existing JCPenney customer was aspirational in nature. They were used to couponing. They were used to shopping sales in order to maintain their budgets. However, these little luxuries was where it was at for them. And like, as we scoped that out, like we had well over 700 Sephora shops inside JCPenney, and they ran at $900 to $1,000 per square foot productivity, which was 3 to 4x the total store. So we did that simply off of drafting off of existing traffic. There wasn't really a large incremental base coming out of it. So really partnering with the right teams or brands in order to drive traffic into your store, super helpful. Coming out of that, we also realized that this little luxuries play was a thing. So we partnered with Ralph Lauren on a brand. We partnered with a variety of other ones just to try to squeak out a bit more money and definitely more profitability out of it. So I'll hop to Target. So when I joined, like I said, they were essentially at suburban saturation. Much of the assortment was done at this dominant profile that they had, thinking that if we targeted them, everyone else would come along for the ride. And I think it worked for them for a long time, right? So the common story that I heard when I joined was that the target shopper was a mom in middle to high income suburbs. And that's precisely who we catered to. This was curious to me because we already had stores like in the San Gabriel Valley in LA, which is Asian dominant. We had stores at places like downtown Brooklyn where all customer profiles come together, right? So it just didn't net out to be true to me. But if we believed this idea of moms in suburbs, our build-out plan was done. Like we had maybe some new Sunbelt growth happening, but our big store portfolio was kind of done. So I was one of the few people that built Target's small format strategy from concept all the way through execution. We built so many different concepts to drive market share, from pet stores to home stores, But really where we landed was a best of Target. So this store needed to meet the needs of each individual neighborhood based on the competitive saturations, like the way that people were using retail, combined with like the gaps in play. So, apologies. So as we were studying this customer behavior, we were really honing in on like how are people shopping at Target and their competitors so that we could take on these, boxes that were 20% or so of a typical prototype Target store to really identify which category should we put into place. So this really drove a significant change at Target across both small stores and large stores because modeling, analytics, and everything was done at the category level versus prior, it was done at the macro level. So we would say before, this Target store is going to do $40 million and it's going to grow to $50 million in the 5th year. But as we started to do this analytics and studying the customer behavior, we did it all at that category level to say apparel is going to contribute this much and food is going to contribute this much. And that's how it's going to impact the pro forma. Okay. So in the end, really, we had decided through analysis and through the growth of the strategy that everybody was our customer. We just really needed to understand like what that meant for us and how to activate against it. So another common theme that I think you've probably heard here, or you will definitely hear coming out of this house in the go forward is like the game has moved from demographic analysis to psychographic, and now it's all about behavioral analytics, all at the local level, right? It's combining all of those things and how people engage with other brands. Like that's what you need to do in order to stay ahead of the game, put stores where you're, in 10-year, 20-year commitments, like in place for the future. Okay. So I wanted to give you another like real life example of like what it means to look at things at the local level and why it's important. So on the left, we have a really simple chart here looking at chain level mosaic segments for Dick's Sporting Goods compared to Academy Sports, right? So, and then on the right, we have 2 stores of the same brands on the south side of Oklahoma City. So Moore, Oklahoma and Norman, Oklahoma. So what do we see? So to me, for Academy, the top 3 customer segments are present at both the chain level and the local levels, right? However, look at Flourishing Families. It's on the far right. This segment moves from the chain level at 9th ranked to over here in Oklahoma to 4th. But also point out that the top 4 segments at the chain level make up about 1/3 of the overall visitation. However, the top 4 segments in Oklahoma in this particular store make up nearly 50%, right? That Academy store in Norman is so completely reliant on a few segments versus at the chain level, it's kind of a scatter, right? You have a few core segments, but it's pretty widespread. So if corporate only looked at customer profiling at the chain level, as so many do, they would have missed the mark on identifying, analyzing, curating to that Oklahoma City customer. And from a real estate strategy, like we may have missed the mark completely because Flourishing Families wasn't that dominant at the chain level. We may not have even like mapped this out as a play. And then from a merchandising standpoint, like we would totally miss out on the curation of assortment for these individual clients. So back to the Target idea, we had tons of markets where we were a strong player in grocery, where there was no dominant grocer. So think like here in New York or in my hometown of Minneapolis, right? People buy a ton of food from Target. But there are other places where we really struggled. Dallas-Fort Worth, like grocery war central, even with H-E-B now entering the market as well. Like it was tough to sell grocery at Target. So had we aimed towards the middle and towards the averages, looking at the chain levels by themselves, like we would have missed the mark across the board. We would have been wasting not just time and effort, but millions of dollars of capital, like investing in the wrong places with the wrong expectations, right? So we had, 20-year firm terms across the board. So like we were in it for the long haul. So we needed to make the decisions correct. Okay. You guys might get dizzy with the graphic, so sorry. I want to talk about clustering because clustering has long been used for merchandising purposes. However, it's largely been after a store is already like set and they want to re-merchandise it, or they want to stand it up in the right way. I actually recommend clustering your stores, your existing store base, as an analytic baseline, right? You really need to understand how behavior exists before, and then how you place stores for the intended customers in the right environments that you're actually analyzing. So let's walk through just a few of these cluster ideas, just to kind of bring it to life. So let's start with trip type. Let's say your Raising Cane's in your ideal state is likely to capture both a lunch crowd and a dinner crowd to catch the revenue and profitability. But could you add a restaurant in an office park? Like, would that work? Could that be profitable just from a lunch crowd and a catering business? And then could we identify existing locations that exist in that? And guess what? It doesn't have to be your own store. Like, it could be a competitor store to really understand, hey, I'm Raising Cane's. I see a Chick-fil-A that's operating in this kind of way. Like, how do I understand how their business is? Like, is their overall traffic comparable to one of their high-performing stores? Like, what are the hours of operations that you can start to modify your labor costs? Like, how can you make that happen? I think that every one of the brands that we work with, people use in different ways. Different day parts, different days of week, all those things. So how do we capitalize on those things in order to further expand our build out? So let's hop over to competition and co-tenancy. I always want to know, like, how do my stores operate in different shopping center environments? Are you in a grocery anchored store? Are you in a regional mall setting? Like, and how does that differ? Like, how does the trade area differ? How does the frequency differ? And then how does that actually matter to the different types or clusters of stores that you want to open? What about urbanicity? People live differently across different urbanicities, clearly. It's largely based on housing size, types, modes of transportation, competitive saturation. Why would we ever build a one-size-fits-all like real estate strategy across so many different urbanicities? It just doesn't make sense. And honestly, like, it doesn't make sense for any of these. Like, you want to make sure that you understand how each one of these categories contribute to your profitability and your revenue, and then go build against that. So great news. We are actually actively working on standardized clusters within Placer, within the platform. So we're looking at every single brand, bringing it down by a lot of the common metrics that you guys are thinking of, a lot of them here, right? How do warm stores activate against cold stores? How do stores near military bases act differently than others? So we're building a lot of this set for you. And then we're also going to have the ability to create some custom clusters with you with different variables associated with it. So I think Kevin Ching, our head of retail and advertising, probably talked about that a little bit today earlier. So you can see, like, Placer is fully on board, and I think this is the path forward to really kind of efficiently run a clustering analysis to help you in your assessments. Okay, so let's get back to areas of interest. To me, this is where we should be spending all of our time. Right? This is really where you build your roadmap for every initiative moving forward. It could be new stores, it could be remodels, it could be any of those things. The site selection tool that we have can really help you define the areas of interest for each type of cluster of growth that you want to do. We'll talk about that in the next slide, but really what I wanted to call out on this is a super simplistic graphic. Our product team is actually working on a machine learning optimization plan to help you specifically with market planning. So if you have a couple different options of trip types that you're trying to capture, so let's say, I don't know, the Chicago market, right? Let's say you already have 5 stores. Imagine putting in these 2 different store types that you want to grow it. And with that, we are calculating for you all the corresponding performance and customer profiles that are actually driving that performance. Then we can force rank at your leadership level, like, which one is more important to me? So let's say that your highest priority is to go after high-income suburban guests, and then your second one is modest income urban guests. Our model, like, think of it, random forest is one version of it. We're working on a variety of that. But if we could spit out like different coverages of stores to optimize against the goals that you've placed out up front, like, is my goal saturation? Is it profitability? But we will start to bring ideas of these are where your store should be located to maximize whatever goal you're seeking. So to me, this is huge, right? Because I think so many companies just go on a one-by-one basis or an iterative model where they say, this is my anchor point, North Park Mall in Dallas, and here's my next best one. Here's my next best one. But that often leads to like suboptimal results. I think this machine learning model will help everyone. Okay. So, Tyler, I'm going to ask you to come up here with me. Clearly, I'm speaking in conceptual terms with all of this. Tyler is my like in the weeds expert. So Tyler Nelson, he is a leader on the customer success team as well. So he leads a lot of our smaller retailers and restaurants, and just helps them at scale to go like really ramp up their business. So hi.
Thank you. So just a fun fact, I'm from Oklahoma City as well. Will had used the Dick's in the Academy example. We just opened up a new Dick's House of Sport in Oklahoma City. Placer has developed a mobile app. In case y'all don't know, we do have a mobile app now. That Dick's, just based on the last 3 months that it's been open, has attracted 70,000 total visits in that 3-month time period. So it just goes to show the importance of looking at your local market and how those demographics and psychographics are actually impacting. That way you can overall make a better decision for your site selection.
That's awesome. I wish I had one. So if you haven't spent much time in the site selection tool lately, I think it's time to get back into it. Like we've evolved it so much from where it was initially introduced. And like, honestly, our teams are more than happy to meet with any of you to go deep into the weeds on that. But the site selection tool, it is a bit of a Swiss Army knife. It can do so much. Here, we're going to talk about it for defining areas of interest, right? Again, which submarkets do we want to be in? So today, you can score retail nodes or shopping centers based on a variety of factors. So visitation, cannibalization, demographic fit. You can do that across your entire chain. You can look at that for the top 25% of visitation stores. You can even look at it in your own clusters or tags, right? So you can say, I want to like open more lower income stores in Chicago. I want to open more whatever it is. So you can do this lookalike for site selection so you can really understand where you want to go. So you can use the scoring to heat map areas of interest and then understand trade areas for those seed points, right? So I'll just call it out here. This is Minneapolis, my home market. So in blue, those are all fresh time locations. I happen to live right on top of one of them. But I just wanted to highlight in green, that's Blaine. That is just a northern suburb in the Twin Cities. And like as we went through this match analysis with site selection, I have eliminated, so you get a score for every single shopping center or retail node that you have. You can also turn on and off or make visible the different grades. So you can look at all of them in aggregate, like A through D. I tend to look at A's and B's just to really start to highlight where are clusters of really quality sites. And then you can start to dissect that, right? So clearly there's a cluster of A's and B's up on that north side. And then you can start to click in on those different shopping centers to understand what that trade area looks like today. So you don't have to guess. You don't have to guess at all. You can say, hey, there is little to no overlap with my existing store base. Like clearly this is the area I should be thinking about.
Yep.
Right?
And so like Will said, when it comes to the actual site selection tool itself, with the ability to grade those different properties, it does also give you the ability to set some different criteria thresholds. So we can look at demographic fit. We can look at cannibalization. We can look at competition density. Do you want to look at only locations that are a half mile from a Walmart, a Best Buy, a Target? So you can also locate near businesses that are complementary to you. Or you can also exclude businesses that are highly competitive, or if you have non-compete with, really helps you overall. Again, just try to save some more time and make a more efficient decision with your site selection criteria. One of the other things that the tool does that is one of my favorites is we can actually overlay the vehicle traffic data as well. So for example, a lot of our car wash clients, they have to have at minimum, 30,000 vehicles per day on a road segment. Being able for them to put that 30,000 vehicle per day threshold in there shows them sites that are immediately relevant to them. And at the end of the day, just helps save them time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, as we start to get into analyzing local options, I should probably change the slide. I know it seems like a lot of steps to get here, but honestly, like a little bit of prep up front saves so much time. Like, think about all the deal makers you have in the market that are bringing random sites to the party. Like, this gives them a targeted roadmap to really say, like, I have a high likelihood that this is a place we want to be. I also have a high likelihood that this will make it through a real estate committee or whatever else it is, right? Because the strategy has already been in place. Now we're just looking for the right center to go tackle it with. So we all know that capital is limited and companies need a strong return on every single dollar. I also think this process will help you communicate to executives the why, right? Why do your strategy? Why is this store going to perform? If you just bring sites to the table in an old analog fashion, like that gives you something. But this shows a proactive strategic roadmap from which to execute against. So the last thing really is like this match analysis tool. It's pretty incredible. It makes the assessment and comparison, I think, super easy. So it provides you with all the major data points that matter, right? You can look at trade area population, you can look at the demographic fit, cannibalization, everything that Tyler's talked about. But I think most importantly is it provides you 3 existing stores if you have them, or your competitors, right? That match most similarly to your site, right? Old way is to look at, a 3 variable analog model. What we have here is a data science driven analog model that takes in 1,000 different variables, right? So you can feel confident that these are the ones that are most like your site. And then you can also start to think about that from a marketing and customer standpoint. Like I should be targeting a similar demographic to what these other stores are. Could even, like if I just needed a gut check on sales, say these other 3 stores do 20 million, 25, and 23, like we're in the ballpark. Like we have a sales forecasting model that we have here. However, this gets you in that ballpark if you want to understand like what profitability could look like. I guess last up is we also need to get in with marketing, right? Because if you're going to spend all this time opening up a new store, like we'd better have a damn good grand opening marketing plan. The good news is we can help with that too. So we work across many departments at many different retailers. And I know we work with many of you in very kind of siloed and like optimized ways. We can, if we got into marketing or merchandising, like we can help them as well. And I think it just adds to the success. So last up, this is just our mission statement. I came to Placer, as many of my colleagues did, because of Noam's vision. He's our CEO. And then like everyone else's relentless desire to make that vision happen. And I think we've hired a really great talent set and we act as advisors. We, on customer success side, we're not salespeople. We're not any of those things. We just want to help you. We want to make you better. We want to help you work through any of these challenges that you're having. So hit us up. We're just getting started. But I think that's what we have for today. So if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Thank you so much, Will and Tyler.